And we're on. Welcome everybody back to the Astro Imaging channel. I assume we're all getting ready for our holidays for Thanksgiving. I know I am, cooking turkeys and cooking pies. I got a couple things to cover, but they're just completely aside from astrophotography. I just want to pass along one rule about Thanksgiving dinner for all of you that are considering it. Don't eat anything that you can't put gravy on. I'm sorry, I just had to put that out there. So we're going to get into the calendar. I'm going to share my screen. I think I'm going to share my screen, entire screen. Here's our calendar. We got some talks coming up, and we also have a couple holidays coming up. Next week, Tim Martin is going to do something on image processing. When I turn the calendar and stop sharing, I'll have Tim give us a little introduction to what he's doing. And of course, next week with Thanksgiving, so we're not going to have a show. So Tim the week after, Alistair on imaging the whole Milky Way in narrow band. Those are some incredible pictures. I've seen them. They're just fantastic. Then we have a couple of holidays. We have Christmas, we have our New Year, we have no shows in each one of those. And then we start the new year, and we have some people lined up. You can see the calendar. We have them lined up through January, but starting in February, we have some open dates. And of course, we welcome anyone that has some ideas and would like to present. Just come to our website, and there's a little place where you can send us a note. Someone will get back to you, and we'll hopefully get you on the calendar. Now, before we go to Tim's little introduction, I just have a short presentation here. Just give me a moment. If I can find the right button. Presentation. Come on, Eric. Here we go. So I thought it was worth a mention that we're really coming to the end of a very fantastic year for astro imaging and astronomers of all sorts. We have had 4 events which we might not see in our lifetime again. And somehow we just kind of zipped through it. We said, well, yeah, that's kind of ordinary, but this is not ordinary. This is extraordinary. So we all know what the 4 events are. Let me just do a little click here. By the way, I did not do this in Photoshop. You can all guess how I did this. I did it with ChatGPT, which I subscribe to. Produce some kind of over-the-top images, but that's all right. Okay, well, of course, the first event is April 8th, the Great American Eclipse, which I think we all went to. And I think one way or another, we all ended up with the money shot of the eclipse. And I think we had one presentation, and I think we're going to have another presentation. Actually, yes, I recruited someone that had an image of the day on AstroBin. And if you go to AstroBin and look back a couple of days, you'll see an eclipse image that is just mind-blowing. That gentleman is going to come on and tell us how he did that. The Great American Eclipse, that's number 1. We had aurora outbreaks. Molly just told us that she had overhead aurora in Albuquerque. That's incredible. We've had 2 of these, and hopefully we all got some images of it. And of course, I'd seen an eclipse, but the aurora was on my bucket list, and I checked off that one. Number 3, this is Solar Max. And if you're a solar astronomer of any sort or just like to take pictures, we are right at the peak of cycle 25 and lots happening on that. So whether you do take solar images or would like to, I would recommend it because it's going to be an active couple. It was an active year. It's going to be an active couple of years coming up. We have Solar Max. And of course, we have the Comet of the Century. And tonight, Molly's going to tell us how to process the Comet data. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And before we get to Molly, stop sharing. Tim, since you're coming up here in a couple of weeks, why don't you give us your elevator pitch on what you're going to talk about?
Okay, well, one of your number, Patrick, asked me if I would come on and and show how I process images, essentially. And so I'm going to do a LRGB image of NGC 1333, and we won't do a super deep dive, but we'll go through all the steps that I typically go through when I'm processing an image, and you can take that for whatever it's worth. So
we actually got a preview of that. It's an extraordinary image, and 1333 is an area where you can shoot up close, wide field. There's always something interesting going on. There's emission nebula, reflection nebula, there's dust, there's everything in that area. Great target. And
it's actually four VDB nebulas in that shot.
BBBs, they are
EDB.
BBB. Yes, sorry about that.
12, 13, okay. 16, 17.
I think we're all set. Molly, it's your show. Go for it.
Alrighty. So tonight I'm going to talk about how to process a comet in PixInsight, which can be tricky, but is made much less tricky with StarXterminator these days. So I got probably my best comet shot ever, because everything else I've tried has always had all these artifacts in the background, but I want to go back and reprocess those now. So instead of, I'm actually just doing something slightly different from sharing my screen. Let's flip over to, oops, not that one, this one, and minimize.
So let's turn off our cameras, everyone. Thanks.
Okay, is that all good, Patrick? Patrick? Okay, cool. Okay. I'm doing it this way because I have an ultra-wide monitor, and instead of having to move PixInsight and every single one of its windows that pops up on my other monitor over to my small monitor and have to move my webcam and move microphone, I'm cutting a section of my screen and using Streamlabs to share that. So hopefully this should all go smoothly. So this is the Comet image in question. This is it's 2023 A3 Tsuchinshan-ATLAS. It's actually a Chinese name. It looks Russian, but it's actually a Chinese name that's transliterated in an interesting way. Yeah, okay. So this is the comment we're going to do. So let me go ahead and get started. Pull my notes here real quick. Okay, so if you're used to using weighted batch preprocessor, the only part of that that's going to be useful to you for this kind of process is calibration. So you may as well calibrate using the image calibration process. So how I'm going to do this is some of these processes take a while to run, so I'm not actually going to run them. I'm going to put the proverbial cookies in the oven and then pull the cookies out that are already baked from the other oven, so that we're not sitting here waiting for processes to spin as I actually run things. I'm going to trust that you know how to do image calibration. I've got a master dark, a master flat. Actually, I should probably note here too that this is an LRGB image monochrome. So it's a little bit different in terms of complexity for processing a comet, because I'm actually rotating through 5 frames at a time, 5 Ls, 5 Rs, 5 Gs, and 5 Bs. And so it's kind of jumping from time to time throughout the sequences. So processing it as not as hard as it would sound, actually, for having monochrome. This was done on a Takahashi FSQ 106N with a ZWO ASI 1600 Pro. Yeah, so when I go to calibrate, I have my master flat and master dark for, I've got my master flat for each of the 4 filters, luminance, red, green, and blue. And then because it was all the same night, same master dark, same temperature, same exposure time, etc. So I'm not going to run that here, because I think hopefully most of you know how to do image calibration. Okay, so after I calibrate the images, this is where things start to diverge from a normal processing chain pretty quickly here. So I'm going to, in order to have both the comet be stable and the stars be stable, I'm going to kind of go down 2 processing chains that will eventually re-merge, which is processing the comet by itself with the stars removed using StarXterminator, and processing the stars, and then those will go back together. So first, in order to have comet alignment work well, and in order to have the stars aligned, we are going to do one process that is the same as you would ordinarily do, which is registration using the star alignment process. So you could, I like to work filter by filter. You can actually run all of the filters at the same time in this process, especially if they're well labeled. So I'm going to take my calibrated images, load my B, actually, I'm going to, my reference frame, which is what I'm choosing here. You can choose one in the middle. I chose one at the beginning just to reduce some other complication. So I'm choosing my first luminance frame because that was the first frame of the whole sequence. And then I'm going to just do my blue frames first. So these are my calibrated blue frames. Nothing else done to them yet, just the calibration. Output those to a, we're going to call this one the star aligned directory. My blue folder, select folder. And again, I'm not actually going to run this because that's going to take time of us just sitting here twiddling our thumbs. But I would hit the circle apply global button to run the star alignment, to run the registration. And then now the important here, you need to use the same reference frame for the star alignment for all of your filters. This is the same as if you were processing any other LRGB or narrowband image where you have to have one global reference frame for all your filters so that all your stars are aligned. So I'm keeping the same reference frame and loading my green frames, changing the directory to the green one, hit the apply global button. So we would do the alignment on all the green frames, and then I would do the luminance frames, and then in the red frames. The order is just because it's alphabetical order and Windows has it that way. There's no particular order for doing star alignment. So we'll say that we went through the star alignment process so that we don't have to sit here and twiddle our thumbs. And now we have a whole slew of star aligned images. So now we can run Comet Align. So there's a process in PixInsight called Comet Alignment. I got all my icons here on the side, but all of these can be found under Process, All Processes, and are listed here in alphabetical order. This is just Comet Alignment. I know you can't, anytime the text is important, I'll zoom in on the screen, but most of the time the text is not important, but I'm hovering over the Comet Alignment process here in the menu. All right, so there's two ways of doing this. I could run all of my LRGB frames together, but I saturated the core of my luminance frames by accident. So I need to actually run those ones separately. So I'm actually just going to do each channel separately, which will result in a different Comet alignment for each of my channels. But then we're going to use Comet alignment again later on to align the 4 channels to each other. It's kind of a neat trick. So we'll start with my blues here. So I'm going to go to the star aligned directory. Go to my blue frames. Now, it's important for Comet alignment that all of your frames have accurate timestamps in the metadata. Unless you're acquiring them in some weird way, or like the clock on your computer is doing weird things, that should be in your metadata from whatever your acquisition software is. It's important that they're all in time order, because the way that Comet alignment works is you select the Comet nucleus in the first frame, and then also in the last frame, and it interpolates between those. And so they have to be in time order. So in order to see the nucleus better, I'm going to leave this unscreen stretched, because then I can see this nice bright nucleus quite easily. So I clicked on Show First Image down here in the middle of the parameters section, Show First Image. And then I'm just going to click on the center of the nucleus of the comet here, and it does a PSF fit to determine where the center of that nucleus is as best as it can. It is, you'll see here that it is almost saturated in my blue channel as well, and my green and my red also, but it's not so saturated in blue, green, and red that it has that it can't find the nucleus. So open my first frame, click the nucleus, close the first frame, and then I hit Show Last Image. Do the same thing. Click on that comet nucleus, close the image, and so now what I have. The parameters are populated now to show the coordinates of where the nucleus is in the first frame and where it is in the last frame. And those are the 2 references, and it will interpolate between that using the also fitting each one with the PSF. So I'm not going to run this one either, but after I run it, I'd want to go check and make sure that they all aligned properly. So I'm going to open Blink and go to my, I'm saving these to a Comet aligned folder. That's what I've called it, B frames. Select all B frames. You set the output folder here toward the top of Comet alignment. So in Blink, I'm loading all of the blue frames that I just Comet aligned. We'll pretend that I ran this process. I ran it earlier for you, so it wouldn't just be sitting around here. And now I'm just going to scroll through to make sure that the Comet nucleus is in the same place in all the frames. You can see the stars moving behind it. But yes, the nucleus does not jump around. It is now aligned around the Comet nucleus. So that's good. The process was successful. So I do the same thing for the green and the red, grabbing the nucleus in the first frame and the last frame. Now, I had to do something a bit different for the luminance frames because they're saturated. So I'm going to show that to you in case you have the same problem. So I'm going to my star-aligned images, opening my luminance frames. And then I hit Show First Image. When I click on the nucleus, I get an error. It says PSF fitting error, PSF fitting failure. And that's because it's fat and saturated, and it can't fit a nice profile to find where the center of this is at. So instead, I'm going to do this by hand, as it were. So I'm hovering my mouse over the center of the nucleus, and down at the bottom of the screen, let me see if I can zoom that in real quick here. Oh, actually, that's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt to figure out. Instead of me trying to move my screen around here. So I'm hovering over the nucleus. On the bottom bar of the screen, whether you can read it on my screen or not, on the bottom bar of PixInsight, it will tell you the coordinates that you're currently hovering over down in this area here. So I hover over it, and I see that it's 3224, 2087. So I'm going to punch that in the box. It's 3224, 2087. Oops, apparently I didn't. Oh, 3224. Okay. So it shows me, so I'm looking at that pink circle, look at it and see, yep, that's in the middle. Cool, we're good to go. So I'm basically manually telling it where the center of the nucleus is. And I have to do that for the last image as well. So zoom in on that core, hover my mouse over, I can see that it's 2919, 2049 are the image coordinates. So 2919, 2049, and it's nicely centered. If it's a little bit off center, then you can adjust these numbers. And if you type in the number, then click outside the box, it will shift the nucleus over, or where the center of the nucleus is. So you can adjust so that it's nicely well centered for where that center is. All right. So now I would hit the Apply Global button. It would run through all of the luminance frames and do the alignment, and then we will double check that that happened correctly. Go into my Comet aligned luminance, load those frames. Loading quickly because I loaded them earlier, and scroll through, and all kinds of satellites are coming through, but you can see that the nucleus is staying stationary in the image, which is what we want. So it succeeded. Yay. All right, unload those images. We can close Blink. So I've done this process for luminance, red, green, and blue now, not having actually run through all of those, but it's the same process for each of those channels. All right, so after Comet alignment, now what we're going to do is, so we have two sets of images now. We have one that's aligned on the Comet, and we have a set that is aligned on the stars. In order to make the key to making the Comet processing easier than it has ever been before is using StarXterminator to remove the stars from the Comet aligned images. And that lets you have a series of Comet images without any of the stars in them and without any artifacts largely in them so that you can go stack that and not have to deal with all of the stuff we used to have to do to try and get rid of the stars in the background of the comet image. So the reason this works is because StarXterminator will let you run on linear mode images, so unstretched images, and also can run in batch mode. So you're not having to open an image, run this, close it. The process we're going to do here, let me turn on that little zoomy screen. All right. I'm going to hit process batch, and I get another window that appears on top. Now, I'm just doing this for the Comet aligned images right now, so I want just the ones without the stars. So I'm going to untick output star files 2, leave output starless files 2, and I'm going to put those in my starless directory, B filter, select. Because we're removing the stars, I don't need to unscreen them because I'm not going to be using the stars that we reject from these images. I'm going to hit select input files and execute, and it opens up the dialog window for me to go select. I'm going to go select the Comet aligned blue images. Again, you can do these all in one swoop as well if you have them all in one folder. I like to keep them in separate folders just for my sanity. So I'd hit. I'm not gonna hit open right now because it will start the execution of the process, and this one does take a little while. So I definitely don't want you guys to sit here for 5 minutes while it runs. But if I were to hit the open button now, it would start to run the StarXterminator process on all of my Comet aligned blue frames and spit those out into my starless folder. So I'm not going to run that. But then I would do the same for my green, luminance, and red. And then what we end up with, I'm going to hit cancel, close, is I'll open a sample here. So now we have starless Comet images that are nice and clean, no artifacts left over, real nice. So this is a huge gain for Comet processing. I'm going to go back and reprocess all my old Comet images now because this is great. So, okay. Now the other thing we need the stars, but we need to, I can't just have it output the stars from the Comet aligned images because I need all the stars to be aligned so that I can have all the stars together to do the stacking and putting them together. So I'm going to run StarXterminator again, but this time on the star aligned images instead. So let me turn my little zoomy zoom back on here. I'm going to do a couple of different settings here. So process batch. I'm going to have it output just the star files because I don't care about the Comet extraction from the star aligned images because the Comet's not aligned in those. So I don't care about that. I just want the stars. So output star files 2. That's going to go into my stars folder. Per filter, select folder. And I'm going to hit unscreen stars here. And so what this does is, if you're familiar with screening in Photoshop, it's the same operation. And if you don't unscreen the stars, basically it's subtracting them from the image. So the star will only be, like if there's other brightness behind that star, like if it's in the comet tail, for instance, that star will only be half as bright as, like as if we just subtracted it out of the image. But we want the whole brightness of the star because the stars are not going to be in the same place as they were in the image I'm about to extract them from when I go put them onto the Comet image. So we need to do the unscreen stars, and later we're going to screen them back on. It's important to click that. And then I hit select input files and execute, go select all of my blue star aligned images, and then hit go, and do the same for my green star aligned, luminance star aligned, and red star aligned. So I'm not going to do that here because, again, I don't need you guys to sit here staring at my screen while it goes. So let me show you what that looks like. Open a sample here. Now, this is a extracted stars image, so it's just the stars. There's no background. So when I go to do an STF auto stretch, it's going to look awful, as you can see here. We've somehow still got the satellite streak in here and some artifacts and things like that. Don't worry, those will go away when we stack. But, and also don't worry how weird this image looks. It's just that because there's no background and it's just the stars, so really dim, like no background, bright stars. The auto stretch algorithm doesn't know how to handle this kind of image, so it looks really funny. Don't panic. It's fine. It's all still there. Okay, so we have all of our star-aligned, star-extracted images now. So I'm going to close that, and we have our comet-aligned, starless images. So now we can stack both of those separately. So I'm going to go to image integration, which I just have as lights stacking on my process icons over here. And I'm going to go put in my comet-aligned. This one you do have to do one filter at a time because you need one blue image, one green image, one red image, yada, yada. So select on my blue frames. You can choose, so this is the Comet image. You can choose what kind of weights you want to have it do. You can do don't care, weights all equal 1. You can do PSF signal weight. Like, I haven't really messed around to see which one of these is better than any others, but I don't know, let's just say we do PSF signal weight. This does run pretty quick on my computer, but again, instead of making you sit here, I'm just going to pull the cookies out of the oven. So so this is the image integration for the blue filter. So I'll show you what that looks like. So here's the integrated Comet image for blue. And then I would do the same for green, luminance, and red, running each of those through image integration. And I end up with my green, luminance, and red stacked images, starless comets. So that's exciting. I'm going to go dock these over here. All right, now it's time to stack the stars. The good news is you don't have to do anything weird or special for that. You can stack it like you ordinarily would. So now I'm going to go to my stars image and add my add all the stars images in here. So I realized I think I had in here my Comet aligned images. I needed to have my starless ones in this process that I selected. I grabbed the wrong folder, but didn't actually stack it. So I'm pulling out the ones that I stacked the starless images for, obviously. All right, so I've loaded all my star images, star extracted for the blue channel. And I'm going to, again, pretend to run this as well. And I'll go open those. So my star stacked images are all here. And again, they're going to look terrible. So it's just super stretching it because it doesn't really know how to stretch this. So I'm going to go dock those as well. I can rename these. That's fine. Okay. So we'll go dock all of those. All right. So we have our stacked starless Comet only images and our stacked stars, nothing else images. All right, cool. So now I'm going to I need to align the Comet images. So because I didn't run all of my filters at the same time in Comet alignment, they each have their own alignment that is going to be slightly different from each other. So if I hover this over here, actually that one's pretty close. These will be pretty close, but not quite exactly on top of each other. So to get them all on top of each other, because their first frames were 30 seconds apart, so the Comet didn't move a whole lot in that time, but I want them all to be completely stable. So I'm going to run Comet alignment again on these Comet stacked starless images. It's the same procedure where I show first image. I'm going to turn off the screen stretch so I can see the nucleus much more clearly. Click on the middle of it there. Close. Now the last image in here is the luminance one. That's the one that's giving me problems. So if I click here, it's going to give me the error again. So once again, I need to hover my mouse over, and get the coordinates. So 3224, 2085, 3224, 2085. And yeah, that's sitting pretty well in the center there. Cool. And then I would hit execute. It would align all of these, and then I would go open those and double check. So we can do that right now. Process, blink. Let me open my LRGB Comet align images. and scroll through and blink, and you can see, even though their brightness is changing, because these are 4 different filters, that the comet is in the same spot for all of them. So success. Okay, so now I can close the comet ones and open the comet aligned ones. And go dock those. Do you have any questions come up while I do this real quick?
There aren't any questions. However, Chandrasekhar has pointed out that you can just combine the star-aligned frames and then extract the stars only, and this will save time.
So when I stacked the comet or the star-aligned images with the comet in them, and the comet is not aligned, I ended up with some artifacts where the comet was, even though most of the comet disappeared. Even when I did the extraction of the stars, some of those artifacts came along with it, and I had to clone stamp them out. So that's why I'm doing it this way, because when I stacked the star-aligned images that had the comet in them, and then extract the stars from that stacked image, I got artifacts.
Okay.
So that's why I'm doing it this way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I imagine there's a little bit of trial and error in some of this
Yes.
also.
Yeah, because I did that way originally and just clone stamped it out. But then I realized when I was putting this talk together today that I could, like, what would happen if I tried to stack the stars only images? Like, can you stack extracted star images and will it work? And yes, it works just fine. So I had to try that out for myself and see if it would work. So that saves me a lot of time and having to go clone stamp out artifacts. Yeah, so and yeah, a lot of this is like, there's a lot of different order in which you could do a lot of these steps, and it's a lot of trial and error. There was, even when I was doing this the first time, it was a lot of like, okay, actually, if I back up and do this here instead and do it in this order, then I can not have this problem that comes up later. So yeah, a lot of trial and error.
Okay.
Okay, so I've got my comet aligned starless images, my star extracted images, and now I'm going to yeah, what order did I decide to do this in? Again, a couple different orders I could do here. I could combine the stars and the starless in each channel and then do the color combination, or I can do the color combination on the comet and the stars and then screen those back together. And I'm actually going to do it that way so I don't have to do the same operation a bunch of times. So I'm going to use the channels combination process. Now I'm doing just RGB and then luminance separately so that I can stretch the color and the luminance separately and then combine them post stretch, which is the way I prefer to handle monochrome data. There's different schools of thought here, but this lets you stretch the luminance image to get the best contrast out of the luminance, stretch the color so that you don't have a lot of background color, and be able to put those together in the best way. And this has worked quite nicely for me. So I'm going to grab my red comet image. I know it's the comet one because it's CA, which is comet aligned. I'm going to grab my green CA and my blue comet aligned here and hit the global button. And now I have my RGB comet image, starless. We'll deal with the cropping here in a bit. But here's my color starless comet. So that's very nice. I'm going to save that into, yeah, so it's going to be number 6, RGB. Yeah, I'm going to put that in. RGB combo starless. Save. All right, minimize that, and I can close the LR. Actually, I should have left the L open. That's okay. I'll just reopen it here. There's the L. So I can close my RGB ones. We'll deal with the L here in a bit. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for the stars. I'm going to combine the red, green, and the blue. I didn't rename them here. Sometimes I rename them to keep track of them for myself, but that's R1, G1, and B1. global button, it's going to stretch terribly because, again, it doesn't know how to stretch this image that's just all black and a lot of white. So yeah, ignore how ugly that looks. It'll be fine later. So now we have, actually, I'm just going to name this stars, keep track of things for myself. Go ahead and save that. That's going to be 6 RGB combo stars, save. And if you didn't already know, to rename an image, I'll do a little zoomy zoom here. You can right click on the image tab here, hit identifier, and type in a name. It does have to be compliant, so it can't start with a number. It can't have dashes or pluses or ampersands or other mathematical symbols. You can do underscores. Yeah, so just call it stars. Okay. So now we have our RGB stars image. I can close my RGB stars. Okay. I think now it's time to, actually, no, yeah, now it's time to recombine the stars and the starless image. I'm looking at my notes over here. So remember, we unscreened the stars from the Comet images when we did the star alignment, sorry, the StarXterminator earlier. So we're going to need to use the, we're going to need to rescreen those stars on. So let me open the zoomy zoom window here.
Molly, I have a
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
Once you have your stars, you can plate solve it and then color correct the stars before you recombine it with
I'm going to have it
comet.
color correct the whole image together.
Yeah, but the comet is a different color correction than the stars.
I still want it to be white balanced, and using the stars will white balance it for the human eye.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think right now the Comet image, yeah, so this is the color it is naturally right now. It's got this red tinge. So the best way for me to correct that is for me to run spectrophotometric color calibration, which I need the stars to do. You can also run other kinds of color calibration, but photometric or spectrophotometric has always worked by far the best for me.
Again, I just doing spectrophotometric color calibration on the comet. What's its reference? You really should do the stars separately, shouldn't you?
Well, so how would you calibrate this image?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, so this way it's at least pretty close to being white balanced for the human eye, because the spectrophotometric color calibration is, you can have it, I have it go to average spiral galaxy, which is one way to say white. Another way to say white is a G2V type star, which is a solar type star. You can have that be the white reference. Either way, it's going to color balance it so that it's like it would look for the human eye. And that's what we're going for.
Okay.
Yeah, so now I'm going to combine my stars and my starless. Let me rename this real quick just to make my life happy. Okay, so this is the, oh, sorry, I realized I had the zoom still up. This is the math for rescreening stars. And what this is literally, it's taking the inverse of, well, this is going to be the Comet image here. So the inverse of the Comet image, multiplying that by the inverse of the stars image, and then inverting that whole thing to be back to being uninverted. So I had to put in the names of the images here in pixel math. So actually, it doesn't matter because this is multiplication. You can have stars first, starless first, it doesn't matter. So my image names are starless and stars. And so I've got this here. And then I'll turn this zoomy zoom, oops, off. Ah. Buttons, okay. And run. Whoops, sorry. Square button run, not round button run for this one. And I have a new image that is my RGB stars combined with my RGB comet. I'm going to do the same now for my luminance. I'll just minimize that, which I'm not going to go bother to rename those right now. So it's just L_CA. You can also, if you right click on the image tab, like I did to rename it, and just copy and paste the image name, you can do that too, especially if it's long and complicated because you opened it from another file name. In this case, I just have LCA, L1. That's just the names of the images. I'm not going to zoom in on this again because it's the same formula. Apply square. And now I have my stars and comet luminance image. So let me go ahead and save those. Save, save, save. I like to, because PixInsight is very serially operated as opposed to the parallelization of doing layers in Photoshop, I like to save out the images as I do major steps so that if I need to come back and do something different at an earlier step, then I can do that easily. You can also save image history and just operate on the same image the whole time, but with generating new images as I combine things and having to make sure that that history gets saved, this way I can see it in my file structure and not just in the history of the image. So there's multiple ways of doing this. I like doing it this way. You can do it whatever way suits you. So this is step 7, L, stars plus starless, save. And I can close my 2 luminance images now that I have the combination. And then I have my combination RGB, save that as RGB, stars plus starless, save. And I can close the comet only and stars only images now. All right, I'm going to rename these RGB and luminance just so I can keep track. Okay, check my notes here, make sure I don't skip any steps. Okay, yeah, okay, now it's I'm going to crop this before I run spectrophotometric color calibration on the color image. I need them to have the same crop. So I'm going to, they should be aligned pretty close to the same way. So I'm going to just pick one of these. We'll do the luminance and open up dynamic crop. And then click and drag the edges so that we cut out our black bars. And I usually do a little bit on these edges too, because it's usually a couple of pixel rows of weirdness on the edges as well. Now, this is important. In order to apply the same crop, I'll zoom in here. In order to apply the same crop to multiple images, before you apply the crop, you have to make a new instance of the dynamic crop process. So you do that by clicking on the triangle here that says new instance and dragging it to the PixInsight desktop. So now I have an instance with all of these exact settings for this exact same size of image. Because when I hit apply, the size of the image, then if I reset this, changes. And so now if I go to apply this same crop over here, it's not going to work. So I'm going to close dynamic crop. And then to apply the same crop to the other image, I just click and drag the process icon onto the image. I can close the zoom here. And now it's cropped the same way. And I can double check by hovering one over the other. And okay, so I missed a little bit of yellow over here on the side. So I'm going to actually undo that real quick and fix that. Apologies. I usually check that before I go to crop both. I'll show you how I check that here in just a second. So let me pull in the edges here. Yes, the way that I check that the crop is correct for all images involved is I click and drag and I keep holding on to the window and I can see where the crop window is laid over top of the image underneath of this one. So I can see now that I'm inside of the area I need to be inside of in the RGB image. So this one should be good to go. Make that new instance, hit the check mark, minimize the luminance, click and drag the crop process onto the RGB image, and okay, now we're good to go. I like to save this crop in case I need to do something at another step and reapply it. You can save process icons individually by going to save selected icons, and I have a little folder called processes, and I call it crop, and I hit save. All right, so now I can close the dynamic crop. I can delete the process, and now we have a cropped RGB and a cropped luminance. All right, so now I'm going to run spectrophotometric color calibration. This one I did not have time to pre-bake in the oven, so I'm unfortunately going to have to run this. I think that should all be okay.
while we're running that, that Chandrasekhar has asked about the benefits of using a color camera or LRGB. How would you compare the benefits?
So especially for Comet processing, because the target is moving, having a one-shot color camera saves you some trouble in having to go align those Comet images and things like that. Also, you can get more frames in a period of time. I might have to go open another version of this because it's going to be stupid. We'll deal with that in a second. And so, yeah, it's a lot easier to do Comet processing with one-shot color. The reason I'd used monochrome here is because it's what's on that telescope. But what monochrome does give you one advantage of having better signal to noise ratio than color. So I can get a better image out of the monochrome if I put up with the additional processing involved. I've been having some issues with the image solver lately. It's because star alignment changes the coordinates of my images when I put them through. And I don't feel like going and looking up what the coordinates were for the Comet right now, if there's just like a target in the middle, like M42, I can just punch in M42 into the coordinates in image solver, and it will load those coordinates, and that will work. But instead of me going and looking up what the coordinates of the Comet were, what the Comet was on that night, I'm just going to open up a prior version of this that I had worked on previously. So I'm going to close this, close that, and sorry, I'm over here on the side of my screen. We'll go over here. So, okay, and the cropped images. Okay, so we're back to here, the luminance and the RGB. Side note, if you press the control button while you hit the nuclear button, it will do an auto white balance on the image. If you hit shift, it will go back to the white balance that it is currently. So that's a way to see what's going on, but still be able to see what's going on in your image if you don't want to see the natural version first. So actually, I need to open a different version of this. Sorry. All right, so this is the plate solved color image here. So spectrophotometric color calibration. In order to run this, you need to have downloaded the Gaia DR3 SP library from the PixInsight website. And in the Gaia process, set where those files are at. I'm going to skip over that for the sake of time. But once that's set up, then you can run spectrophotometric color calibration. I haven't taken the time to go through and go find the filter profiles for my actual filters. This does happen to be Optolong RGB, so that's convenient, but the sensor is not one of these sensors here. So you can do a better photometric color calibration if you have your actual sensor profile and your actual filter profiles in here, which I think a lot of people have been publishing, and you can go load custom ones. I haven't had time to deal with that, so I just run these and it works pretty well, honestly. I'm not gonna run it because it's gonna take a while. So I'm just gonna go ahead and open the SPCC'd image. And here we go. So if I hit shift on the nuclear button or control on it, they should be pretty close now. So this is, if I hit shift, this is what the actual white balance is right now. All right. At this point, I would run StarXterminator on the luminance channel. And let's see, y'all go ahead and open. I would run StarXterminator and NoiseXterminator on the luminance channel. I'm just going to open that image. So this is had StarXterminator and NoiseXterminator run on it. I didn't, let's see, did I go back and, oh, I thought I did that. Yeah, I would at this point, I would run NoiseXterminator on the color image so you don't have all this color noise in the background. I didn't do that the first time around, so I don't have that one handy. Yeah, I run NoiseXterminator here. Don't worry about running StarXterminator on your RGB image because the sharpness is going to come from your luminance image. So you can run it if you want to, but it's more important to run it on the luminance image, and that will be the sharpness of the color image when we go to combine the luminance and the RGB later. Okay, I need to start moving through this, so let's go ahead and stretch. From here on out, it's more just like your normal image processing. There's nothing special you have to do anymore. We have a still star, still comet image combined together. I have my luminance, I have my RGB, it's been color corrected. So from here on out, it's really just kind of running it like you would in an ordinary image. I'm going to go ahead and run through how I stretch images though, because it's pretty cool and works great for me. And so I'll go ahead and toss in this bit here too of how I like to do that. So generalized hyperbolic stretch is a fantastic tool. There's multiple ways to stretch in PixInsight. Some of them are better suited for some situations. I find generalized hyperbolic stretch works really well for me in pretty much in most situations. You can definitely also stretch the stars separately from the comet and then recombine. I find that especially helpful if I have stars like a really set, like a background with tons and tons of stars that overwhelm the image. I will understretch that and then combine those stars back in to this stretched deep sky object image. And that can be a way to help keep those stars toned down. But this is a pretty cut and dry image now. So I'm going to turn off the auto screen stretch so I can see what I'm doing. Hit the preview button down here in the lower left. All right, so first I need to set the symmetry point. That's going to make this S curve around. So I'm just using my mouse wheel over the zoom number here. And let's see, I guess I'll go ahead and turn this on for the moment. So I'm just zooming in on that histogram peak there. And I try to go about 1/3 to 1/2 of the way up the right side of the peak is where I set that symmetry point line. Then I zoom back out so I can see the whole histogram. And then, sorry, I'll leave that here for the moment. I grab the stretch factor and pull that to the right, and you can see the image brightening up. This is one of those processes that's best run in increments. So I'm going to pull it a bit. I'm going to pull the local intensity to kind of flatten that out a bit. And I'll turn off the preview here so you can see the whole window. Hit apply, reset. And you can see that there's a whole bunch of blank space to the left of the peak here. That's why it has this gray background. I'm going to darken that background a bit. So I'm going to switch from generalized hyperbolic type to linear type and move this to the right, which moves the peak to the left. If you go all the way to the left, you're going to cut off the image and it'll just be black in the background. You don't want that. It's not natural. So I'm going to leave a foot over there on the left so that the background of the image is not totally black, but like a nice dark gray. Hit apply, reset, zoom back in on my histogram, set this to about 1/3 of the way up the right side of the curve, send to SP is the button I'm hitting here to make the symmetry point. Zoom back out, stretchy stretch. And I'm going to go back and forth on this a couple of times, going back and forth between linear and hyperbolic. Apply, reset, symmetry point, stretch. Oops. You can also mess around with the protect highlights. My image is already saturated, so I'm not bothering to try and protect the highlights. But if your core is stretching too quickly, you can move this protect highlights button over, and it will change the shape of the stretch curve so that it's not stretching very much up in the high region there. You can see how that curve changes shape. So hit apply, reset. And yeah, somewhere about here, I'll be like, yeah, okay, that looks good. This is all about eyeballing it and seeing what you like, what makes sense, getting the most contrast out of the image. Could I do more on this? Yes, I'm not going to do more on it right now for the sake of time. Sometimes I'll get this far and I'll go do the rest in curves transformation instead to be able to manipulate that S curve a little more finely by having multiple points along which to go grab it. So at this point, I would do the same thing for the RGB image. I'm going to spare you watching the same process again and just open the stretched RGB image. Yeah, make sure you save the stretched images. So I would save this at this point. All right, so now I've got my luminance, my RGB. They're both stretched. I'm going to open the one that I did earlier because it's probably better. Actually, I'll leave that there just in case I don't like it. CL stretch. Okay, yeah, whoops. All right, so now we can combine, yeah, the L and the RGB together. That is done using the LRGB combination process. And so I untick R, G, and B and just have L ticked, and I go grab the L image, the luminance image, and I'm going to apply it to the RGB image. And I've got chrominance noise reduction turned on, and I don't set anything else here because we've already color calibrated the RGB image. So I'm just going to hit the square apply button. It's going to run here for a second because it's doing the denoising. We're getting close to the end here. All right, so now I have the luminance behind my RGB image. So I'm going to hit Control Z and Control Y so you can see the difference. You can see that my stars are smaller because the stars are tighter in my luminance image. In a lot of images, the difference between having luminance and not having luminance is pretty stark. Here, it's a little less obvious, but this will let you get more detail out here, which will become apparent when I run HDR multiscale transform, which I'm going to do here in a little bit. So I can close LRGB combination. I can close my luminance image, and now I've got my LRGB. I would save this image. Okay, we're almost done. Now we're just doing goodening. So go to curves transformation. If there's anything that came out weird from SPCC, which it should balance your colors correctly, but if there's, if you want to change how the colors are balanced because it looks better, this is one place you can do that using the red, green, and blue here. You can use a color mask. I'm not going to show that today for sake of time. But I want to do a little bit of contrast enhancement. So I'm on the RGBK option here. I'm going to pull up the midtones, pull down the darks, and pull up the highlights a bit. I don't want to go too far because I'm already saturated. Hit apply, reset. Let's also enhance the color a bit. So I actually prefer to use the C component as opposed to the saturation. C component acts like vibrance does in Photoshop, and somebody explained to me recently what exactly it does, but it's operating in the LAB space and doing something a bit different than saturation does. And I find that it's nicer. Let me not oversaturate my stars here though. At this point, I might separate the stars and the comet again using StarXterminator so I can operate on the stars and the comet separately. I'm not going to do that right now, but that is an option if you like. And right now, as I increase my C component, my stars are getting a little oversaturated when the comet isn't as saturated as I would like yet. So that's one reason why you might want to split. But this is a small-ish operation. Don't go too crazy because it's really easy to have weird stuff happen to your image. So I'll just pop this up here a bit. Hit apply. You can do this kind of multiple times in small increments to get more goodening. So we'll leave that there. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to do is run HDR multiscale transform. And that's going to bring out the detail that is there, but isn't super contrasty and obvious in the tail. So let me turn on the zoom here. Now, this is also trial and error. One thing I like to do is I'll make a preview over part of it and run this on the preview so that it runs faster. And then when I'm satisfied with that, and you hit Control-Shift-Z to undo stuff that you do on the preview window, I'll go back and I'll run that on the whole image. So I remember from earlier that using 8 as the number of layers is what worked for me. There's lots of different things to change here. You can turn off median transform and try these different kinds of scaling functions. You can try doing different numbers of iterations. There's lots of different settings to mess around with here to try and get this to work best for you. So I'm going to hit apply. This one does take a second. And the window doesn't pop up during this one for some reason. Now, look at all this detail that came out when we applied some HDR. So HDR is high dynamic range. It's basically compressing the brightness values of the image to a smaller scale so that you can see more brightness values at one time. So it lets us see, but basically is increasing the contrast is the effect in most images. And so now I have an increased contrast on the tail, which lets me see a lot of this detail that was kind of obscured before. Now it did kind of brighten up my core a little bit. So I could do some masking. I could mess around with these settings some more, things like that. And can Control Z, Control Y to kind of see the difference here. But for the purposes of tonight, this is about where I'm going to end it. And yep, that was the last step I had planned. Oh, I still had the little preview on here. Sorry. Let me do that back and forth again here with the preview off. So you can see the whole image. So there's the HDR image. And yeah, that's how you process a Comet image where you have still stars, still Comet, and utilizing the goodness of StarXterminator in order to do that and not have to deal with all kinds of crazy background artifacts like we used to have to do. And that's what I got.
All right, thanks, Molly. Are you sharing? You're not sharing, are you?
I'm not sharing, but I will flip back over to my webcam here.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
There we go.
I don't think we have any questions. Alex, are you watching it? I don't see any more questions on
No,
YouTube.
the Chandrasekhar 2 we talked about already. And here comes the compliments. Look at those compliments. Oh my gosh, they're just scrolling by.
I'm sure.
You know, I captured it for 2 nights, and I made my life easier by getting, I think, 400 luminance frames.
Nice.
And then at the end, just getting RGB. So you only had to process a little bit of RGB and use that as a background. And
Was it one-shot color RGB?
No, but I mean, these are 30-second exposures. You can get.
Yeah, you can get a whole bunch of them. And yeah, and
without, if you did it all the way through, I was going to say, oh my God, that's going to drive me crazy. So I just basically LLL for a full hour.
Yeah, that's like a lot of people will do more L, like they'll split up the same time they had for L among R, G, and B. I tend to just balance all of them, but it's probably not the optimized way to do it. Yeah, L is definitely more important because that's where the detail and the noise are going to be apparent. And I know you know this, Eric. I'm just telling people. For the luminance channels where the noise and where the signal to noise ratio and the sharpness of the image and the detail, it's all in the luminance. So putting more of your effort into luminance is worth it. And then you don't need a ton of color to get enough color information to get nice color on your image.
No, and you can squeeze the color out of it and go a little bit overboard and then use the luminance to damp it down. And then get the detail out of the luminance. Yeah, I was going to say there's more than one way to, I'm not going to say it because I have a cat too.
I hate that phrase so much.
My wife does too.
But
there's more than one way to capture. And kind of, fortunately or unfortunately, you get all done with a night and you go, I should have done it a little differently. But this comet's been around, so you can do it again.
Yeah, you have a lot of opportunity, and you can take it over multiple nights. As long as the comet itself isn't changing too much in that time. Because even though the comet is moving across the background of stars, we're choosing a star background to have this be on. In one of the frames, this was the true star background for this image, but obviously as time goes on, it's going to be moving through the field of stars. So this is an opportunity, again, I'm telling the audience, it's an opportunity to get multiple nights of data on a comet and have a still star background that you choose from the middle, the beginning, the end, whatever makes the most sense. Maybe it's going through the Pleiades. I don't know.
I would, well, if we can get to go through the Pleiades, maybe we could give it a little turn to the left and go through a galaxy or something. Those are always cool. But I would argue against doing multiple nights because multiple nights, that tail structure, and this comet has a tail structure. Over multiple nights, you're going to fuzz that out.
Probably.
unless you deliberately show multiple nights, because this is a cool comet. This is our comet of the century. Maybe there'll be another one because the century is early, but right now this is the comet of the century.
Yeah,
Any
it was
questions?
great to be able to see that visually.
Oh yeah, that was it was a cool. It was also great just to show its coordinates, and actually the L mount from PlaneWave you can put in the comet and it will track the comet, which is kind of cool. And just to see it pop up there in front of you going 30 seconds, look how bright that thing is.
Yeah, and actually you can do that in PhD as well. So if you have a mount that doesn't already have the ability to track comets like paramounts do and PlaneWaves do, you can use PhD to track a comet, and it will intentionally move the stars at the comet rate. So that's pretty cool. You have to do a little bit of configurement, but it can do it.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to track. Otherwise, you're sitting there, trying to move it around manually.
But then you're going to have streaked stars in that instance, because then in your subframes the stars are going to have moved. But those make really cool images too. I could also turn this into a movie where I have the moving comet against the still star background, and show each of for monochrome it doesn't really work because I did like 5 frames at a time, so it would kind of jump. But if I was using one-shot color, then that's really easy to do. Well, it's not easy to do, but you can do it.
Molly, how long was it from your first exposure to the last?
That is a great question. I will go look right now. Okay, so the first exposure was at 7:57 p.m. on October 21st. And I don't know where the last exposure ended up, which filter was on LRG or B. So let me go look here real quick. See 2103, 2100, 2057. Okay, so 9:03 p.m. Sorry, 9:04. There's a luminance frame that ends at 9:04.
Just an hour, 5 minutes.
So yeah, a little over an hour.
Yeah, mine was an hour. An hour was plenty of data.
Yeah, these are 30-second exposures. I forgot to mention that. These are 30-second exposures, which still, on my system, oversaturated the core. Oops. But yeah.
Well, the other problem with how long, the comet was setting.
Yeah, that was like I did the I have the hour because that's as long as I could see it for, basically, before it got so low that it was in the muck.
Yeah, it was a fun comet. I hope everyone had a chance at least to see it, if not to photograph it. One of our big 4 events of the year.
Yeah.
Comet of the century. Are we all set?
That's it for me.
Got all the questions asked?
We've got all the questions.
We got all the questions, and we're not going to be around next week because we're all going to be kind of overstuffed and still recovering from a delicious Thanksgiving dinner.
And all our international visitors, please have some turkey anyway, just because.
and all our vegetarians, enjoy the stuffing if it was made properly. And the great
stuffing is made with the gizzards. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I'm sorry, you're right. But I'm sure there's accommodations for having a vegetarian or a vegan Thanksgiving. It's the celebration that counts. And pecan pie is still
okay.
I'm sorry,
we've gone far enough. Let's get back to the Astro Imaging channel. What is there to do?
Thanksgiving. And everyone have a great Thanksgiving. And I think we're done. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.
2 weeks.
Let's thank our technical crew.
Yeah.
Thanks to
everyone.
Patrick.
Who ran tonight? Patrick, were you running it?
Yeah.
Patrick was running. I think
was Jaime or Terry back up?
Jaime and Terry.
Who was back up? I don't have the.
I was back up.
Well,
okay.
I give thanks for them.
All right, everyone. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Enjoy your
Happy Thanksgiving.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.